I want to touch on this because it's amazing here. So you talked about that you brought someone on that you want to have become the future CEO. I
Yes.
I want to unpack that because that's another thing that you never ever hear anybody talk about. If anything, they may know deep down inside that I shouldn't be the face of this company. I don't have the skills to run this company. I can't grow this company, but they would rather let their company die than hire someone to offset their weaknesses and to grow a stronger company. What take us through
That's true.
why you're hiring your upcoming CEO?
Yeah. So I've got it on the board here what my job description is and what positions that I do. I look at it every morning, and there are things inside of that job description that I absolutely loathe. But because I am, the head of the company, I have to do those positions. I have to fulfill that role, and I have to make those things happen so that we can move forward. Ultimately, I only want to be doing marketing. I only want to be doing sales. I don't want to handle the production. I don't want to handle the numbers. I don't want to handle picking up payments from clients other than the sale. There's a lot of things I don't want to be doing. So to reverse engineer that, who has to do those if I don't do them? And that means I have to have a CEO who's handling that kind of stuff. That means I have to have somebody who's tracking those numbers and who's making sure that we're staying profitable, and who's making sure that I have to have somebody who's making sure our production is staying where it is. I have to have somebody that, I'm able to cast a 2-year vision. I'm able to cast a 5-year vision. I'm able to cast the 6-month vision, but I don't want to actually make any of those happen. I have to make them happen right now because that's just where we are, and it's just a realistic expectation that I need to make this happen. But I'm slowly handing the reins to him. He's getting involved in our culture. He's getting involved in our direction, understanding our product, understanding our mission. And slowly he's just taking over each segment. And as he takes each segment, he gets a pay raise. So it's like, hey, I need you to take over this. I need it, to look. I actually don't even tell what I need it to look like. I tell him what it needs to be. So here's what the end result should look like. Just figure it out. Who, not how. I don't know if you've read that book, but that book has literally changed my life.
Do you actually read these or listen to them?
I listen. I don't read. Yeah, I know I'm that guy.
That's
but that who, not how mentality, where he's definitely my who. I don't need to tell him how. I just need to say, here's what I would
You
like
want
it
the
to look
result,
like. And then I give him
let
time.
him figure out how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Give him space to fail.
How did you come up with the idea that you needed this person, and that the things that you just said that you wanted to do, basically the marketing of the business, was what you wanted to focus on? Like, I mean, is that just because you heard it enough in a book or something, or like, how did you come up with like, hey, I need someone else to do this thing?
So inside of that book, and this is it's part of this. It was happening, but it was going on before that. But one of the things that he says in the book is procrastination is wisdom, and I find it funny because my dad, my mom would always joke about my dad. He's the biggest procrastinator in the world. He'd always put off things. And ironically, the things that he was always putting off on were his greatest weakness. They were always the things that he struggled with the most. And my dad ran his own business for 45 years and was a home builder in Williamsburg. And so I watched growing up. I watched my dad struggle with these unique they're not unique struggles. And I watched my mom kind of pushing him and kind of in a good way, kind of like, hey, take care of these things. And my dad would like deliberate, is what we called it in the end, not procrastination, deliberation. And so procrastination is wisdom. So if there's something that you're procrastinating on, if there's something that you're deliberating on, if there's something that you're not taking action on, chances are it's because you don't get the fulfillment of the completed task. So if you're not fulfilled by that task, if you're not fulfilled by the actual completion of that job, then why are you doing it? You should only do things that actually make you fulfilled. And it doesn't mean you love your job 100% of the time. It could mean that you love your job only 3% of the time that you're doing it. But you should be doing things that you actually, that 3% is the completion of that task. You feel fulfilled. You feel like you're actually doing something. You're pushing, you're pushing the limit to so to speak. So procrastination is wisdom. If you're not being fulfilled by it, find somebody who is fulfilled by it, give them that task, and then you focus on only the things that you're getting fulfilled by.
That line is in that book, Procrastination is Wisdom, or that's what your mom said?
No, that's in the book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just watching that is kind of how I learned a lot living through that. And then, hearing it in that book, it was like, yep, okay, I can't, I'm not going to be my dad,
It just makes me think of that commercial. I can't think of who it's for. I think it's an insurance commercial though about not becoming your parents.
It is, but yeah, that's a great commercial.
But that's fascinating though. I've seen. I don't know, Zach. How many founders have you seen that should not be the founders of the company or the face of the company, and they won't act on
a higher percentage than you would think.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be the face of the company. I just don't want to run the gears in the background.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's and so they mix that up, right? And so I don't know. Honestly, as I'm sitting here thinking about that, like I'm gonna Zack stat it out and say over 75% of people are not the ones who should be running that company. Probably because to have a lot of those, maybe more, maybe like 99% of those businesses, right?
And it's okay.
It's fine. I just think that like entrepreneurship in the last decade has been glorified where people really want to be famous and excited about it, which is great. But that doesn't, and I'm super excited that people want to be that, but that doesn't mean that that person who could be the face of the business should also be the one doing all this other stuff too. A lot of businesses too, you got to think about, and this is interesting that you're not is they're really good at a trade. And that trade is normally the business. And then like they have no business sense, but they are everything in the business because of that. And so it's hard to find a CEO. And then it's hard to have enough money, I think, in a lot of these cases when you know how much, if you look at just kind of your standard business, and most businesses don't have enough money to probably hire those additional C-level suites. I was listening to this guy recently who hired a CFO, and the reason he pulled the trigger on the CFO is because he didn't realize that he had $250,000 worth of money sitting in an account that he hadn't linked to a bank account until like a year later when he logged in. It was like, why is all this money on here? And he's like, well, the CFO would have known that.
Yep.
And like, where is this money? And because he was wearing too many hats. And I think it's there's a line though, right? Because at the beginning, I think a lot of businesses, they have to wear a lot of hats. But then as you grow, you have to like peel back the onion and be like, yo, like I can't be doing all this stuff. And I think more businesses need to recognize that and realize that it's not a bad thing. And don't be so prideful in your business.
It's a scale thing too, because there's I tell everybody on my team that we all have to wear multiple hats. We're not a corporation where the production manager can't step into operations and operations can't step into finances and finance. Like we're not big enough where you can just wear that one hat. And so being willing to cross the line and being willing to wear multiple hats, like I've worn all the hats for years, and you get used to it after a while. But it's important to know which hats you can take off when. It's because I think I see a lot of people, and I'm generalizing now, I'm sure, but I feel like I see a lot of businesses fail because the owner takes off a certain hat too soon or delegates a task without checking back in on it, or is not willing, kind of is like there's a task that they're not very good at handling, they don't want to handle, so they put it on somebody else's plate, and then they never follow up to make sure that task is happening correctly, and they never make sure that person is equipped to make that happen. So as a result, that person ends up failing in that position because the owner, the founder, whoever wasn't willing to take responsibility to make sure they followed that task all the way to its completion in the proper sense. So it's good to take off hats, but you have to make sure you're taking them off with the money and the application.
I can think of my biggest business mistakes, at least financially, are when I made abrupt decisions that should have had more outsider information on, like more feedback from other people. Not necessarily from my team, but other people that I trust I could have been like, hey, here's what's going on. What do you think? And I can think of, a handful of things that had I reached out to a couple of people or been listening to books at the time, I probably wouldn't have made that decision and probably wouldn't have had to have gone through that, that financial loss, if you will, had I been smart enough or wise enough to even just call Tim and be like, yo, what do you think I should do here instead? I was like, yo, this is what we're going to do instead. And so, move fast in some things, but recognize that, hey, like there are times when you need to sit back and call on others to do it.
Yeah.
Someone who's been directly involved within the startup community for almost a decade, I want to talk to you about a serious pain point. Spending a ton of time trying to understand the business landscape in the 757. That's time that should be focused on growing the business. At Startwheel, we're here to help you by compiling all of the news you need to know about in one place. Now there's no need to search multiple websites. Just head to startwheel.org and see for yourself. That's startwheel.org.